Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February 13th, 2025 business meeting of the Croton Harmon Union Organization. Item 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Recommended action to exalt the organization hereby approves the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Item 2.1, the President's report. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anna. Good evening, everyone. As many of you know, one of the recent scheduling innovations at CET has been the start of what we're calling Tiger Day, which is an opportunity for the entire school community to come together to share in some wonderful common experiences as faculty get a chance to innovate and collaborate together. And during the most recent Tiger Day, the entire student body was had the opportunity to hear from some of our outstanding young CET performers. And the group we have here tonight objectively killed it during the last Tiger Day. So Mr. Campanera and Mrs. Bianchi, we're honored to invite them to be here tonight. And we are so incredibly thrilled that you're here to share some of your talents with us. So first, I'd like to introduce Donald and Jake Sivan. Donald's in Mrs. Stratner's class in 4th grade and Jake's in Mrs. Baker's class in 1st grade. Come on up, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Found myself in times of trouble, but with them, let it be. And so, steady. Let it be. So let it be. Let it be.
People think they're gonna better themselves. Great job, great job. Thank you so much. And next from 3rd grade, Mrs. Glynn's class, Adeline Miller.
Here's my story about who was in a huge tragedy. Strange restaurant by the shell service. I said, I'll take the T-bone steak, stop forcing me full. I looked up and realized the waitress out. I'm like, steak, forget steak, I'll take the chicken. I never luck, it was just my luck. Plus 40 what I had. I said, okay, no foul today. I'll take the seafood dish. Then I saw through the kitchen door. The hook, he was a fish. I screamed, is there anyone working here who's an onion? Beet? No. Okay, you sure? Okay, Princess Salad Jones. They said, they looked at me. Oh no, they said, you owe me 2 pounds head. When I went to the restaurant to go to the freezer, and just when I got there, I saw this ice cream shop at Bell Silver Street. The service train and ice cream shop at the 52 flavor ice cream stand. The animals all over the train walked right up to the ice cream man. I'll take them, yelled the road. Take chocolate, shouted the oxford. I'll take strawberry, chirped the canary. Rocky Road, croaked the toad. Line, grab line, said the ice cream man, till I said on the way, no ice cream mine. Then the animals snarled and screeched and growled and whined and whimpered and hooted and howled and gobbled up the whole ice cream stand. All 32 flavors, 53 with the ice cream in it. So then I went home to Berlin and realized how much of a crazy night this was.
Donald and Jake Sivan, Ms. Stratton is making Miss Walters' class, and Adeline Miller, Ms. Flynn's class. We reached out to Assistant Principal Craig Campanero, who let us know that Donald and Jake are a brother duo. Donald plays the ukulele and Jake plays the harmonica. And Donald loves the Beatles, and when Donald was taking ukulele lessons, Let It Be was the first song they learned to play. That's why he chose this piece. Jake says he likes singing with his brother, and sometimes they even make up their own songs. So we would love to hear those when you get around. And again, through Mr. Campanero, we were told that Adeline enjoys reading poetry. And she chose these poems because they were about food, they were funny, and they were a little weird. And she feels that she can connect with the Shel Silverstein poems, as I think that's amazing. I felt good choice, Adeline. Thank you so much for being here tonight and for sharing these performances. I can only imagine the excitement that all of your fellow students felt at CET during this exciting time at during Tiger Day, when you're able to do this for them. Thank you so much for being here. But we know you have to get up early tomorrow to go to school. So we hope to continue to do this in the future. Hello. Okay. Thank you again. Bye. We hope to continue to do this in the future with some of our recognized students to highlight student achievement in our schools. Coming up, we have some great achievement happening with our art students, both the Scholastic Key Award winners and CHUFSD students featured at the Katona Art Museum. And Social Security's Council Wharton Global Investment Competition team, a globally recognized, highly competitive program, our second consecutive year. This year making it into the semifinals of the top 50 teams among 1,800 submissions from around the world. Good luck to the team as they will be to hear regarding advancement. Denise, did you want to?
Yep, correct.
So there are 2 open seats for our Board of Education trustee. I'll let our, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let our district clerk Denise Pistacia run through some information regarding upcoming dates.
Thank you. Like Anna said, there are 2 school board member positions to be filled by election to be held on Tuesday, May 20th. Information on the school board experience, qualifications that are necessary for prospective candidates, and candidate packets are available on our website in both English and Spanish. Please note that while 25 signatures are required for nominating petitions, candidates are encouraged to get a few more signatures in the event that some of the nominating signatures are found to be invalid. Candidates must submit expenditure statements at 3 points, April 21st, May 15th, and June 9th. Westchester Putnam School Board Association provides a free workshop on April 7th, 2025. If you visit their website, it's linked here as well. Registration is available in English or Spanish. Any further questions, please contact me.
So in addition, our board will hold 2 information sessions for prospective members to be held before our BOE meetings. Thank you to Sarah and Monica for creating these events. The first will be held on Thursday, February 27th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And the second will be held on Thursday, March 27th, again from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. The location somewhere in Croton High School to be determined, given all the construction and last minute changes. But we will definitely get that information on the public. So at this time, it has been the custom of this board to allow sitting members to publicly announce their intentions to run for the current seat. So I'll ask Theo Shiro, if you'd like to make a comment now. or-
Yeah. Is this thing on? Yes, it is. Okay, thanks, Anna, and I do intend to run for another term on this amazing school board, this Board of Education, and I just say 2 very brief things. One is that I believe that democracy happens in spaces like this, right? And I would be honored to continue to engage in this process. I've learned so much from this school board and every member in it and members of the administration, the public, et cetera. So, and the second thing I would say is that I love elections. I think elections are wonderful opportunities for dialogue, debate, and expression of vision. And so I'm excited about that element of our civic engagement process as part of the school board and running for school board. So just excited about that part of it, that dialogue and that debate. So I am going to run, and I would be honored to be reelected, but we'll see, you know, and I think that just want to thank everyone in this space for everything that the school board does. I know that so much of the nitty-gritty that we talk about is, really what makes up what we're all working towards, right? Which is our young people in our schools. So really appreciate the opportunity to run again, and I don't know, that's it. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Theo. Josh, Ben?
Doesn't feel like it's actually been 12 years, but it has. And it has been my honor and pleasure to serve on this board for that time. But I've decided that I will not be seeking re-election this year. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One has to do with changes in my own personal life that demand more of my time. Another is that I sort of feel that after 12 years, it's time to pass the baton on to a younger generation of potential school board members. My kids, the youngest of my kids graduated now 6 years ago. And yeah, I believe that it may be time to consider that and make some space for a candidate that I feel that could step into my shoes, step into the board, and make a difference with newfound energy and excitement, and work together with this board, bringing some new ideas and learning some old ideas, and continuing to do what I've strived to do for the past 12 years, which is to do the business of the children of our district, because that's really why we're all here. It's why I always wanted to be here, was to make sure that each and every student got an amazing education. That is always a job that is, and a task that is never done. It is always evolving. And I look forward to seeing what the next sitting board members will do with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I just want to say, I want to thank you for your generosity of advice, support, and thoughtful counsel over the years. I've had the honor to sit with you as a trustee. I'm very sad that I won't be sitting here with you going forward. but I'm better for having sat alongside you, so. Your commitment to students was always very apparent, and your tenure will be spoken of with fondness and respect for your hard work and service. Thank you so much. Now, 2.2, hearing of the public. Part of the monthly business meetings, the Croton Harmon Board of Education has chosen to provide an opportunity for community members to share brief comments during hearing of the public sessions regarding issues affecting our schools. In an effort to be efficient and productive, comments, particularly on agenda items, are welcomed. Individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers should state their name and Croton Harmon School District address. And all comments must be addressed to the board and trustees. Comments about a specific person, staff, student, or Croton Harmon district resident are prohibited. All right, Mr. Ryan.
Aaron, everyone, three or four items, item one. Committee meetings are public meetings. And although this board and its staff does a terrific job in terms of promoting individual meetings of the board, some committees do a lousy job of scheduling the meetings. And I've noticed in certain committees, there's been a pattern for the last month of scheduling meetings at the last minute. That means you hold a meeting the day after you post it, because I monitor your calendar religiously. I think that should be reformed. You should give a little bit of advice to your committee chairman about these last minute schedulings, because you not only affect your own members, you affect members of the public. Item two, might be a good idea to have an agenda for these committees. Second, I've always thought it was a great idea to have a separate school board election in May, as it should be. You keep things separate, you address the issues regarding education locally, etc., which we do. We used to have that for the village board. We should go back to that. And in the future, we're going to have petition drive in Croton to move the elections, the village elections, back to March where they belong, so that people can address the major issues that affect this village, as opposed to having monthly national elections, state elections, judicial elections, which have nothing to do with the village of Croton. And that's part of the problem we've had with the great animosity between parties in this village, because a particular party intentionally moved those elections in November when they'd be mixed up with all that stuff. And because of the voter registration, they would win every time. Right and true. With many of the climate initiative failures over the last 5 years, whether it be windmills in the Atlantic now costing 300% of what they were supposed to cost, whether they're Westchester power grid costs, which are supposed to be green friendly, which are now 20%, sometimes more than they would be if you put in the electric company, that you should examine your curriculum to see if the items in that curriculum, in terms of climate and energy, don't jive with reality and are pure propaganda, which I've seen some in this school district. Last item, there are certain controversial subjects that this board has to address. I'll give you one. We all know about the internment of 110,000 Japanese citizens during World War II. We do not know that the Japanese, first of all, we do not know how many Japanese, we do know how many Japanese were returned to Japan during the war because they were enemy aliens. And we do not know, but we could discuss the fact of what the Japanese army did in China to the Chinese people, where they murdered millions of them and engaged in cannibalism. Exhibit A is the rape of Nanking. So we should have, and I don't see it in your history system, we should have balance and thoughtful and forethought. Maybe we should hire more experienced English and history teachers. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? My name is Erica Loudon. I live at Penfield Avenue. I'd like to thank the Board of Education President Anna Teague for mentioning earlier in this meeting that the Croton Harmon High School Croton Securities Council made the semifinals of the Wharton Global High School Investment Competition. As an alumni of Cornell University's S.C. Johnson Graduate School of Business, I cannot express how prestigious this competition is for high school. Croton Harmon High School is now amongst the top 50 teams out of the original 1,800 teams from around the world. Croton Harmon High School is now competing amongst the top 50 prestigious schools from around not just the USA, but also the world, and including such schools as Stuyvesant High School, Deerfield Academy, Friends Academy New York, the Pingree School, Brearley School, the Harper School, Raffles Institution in Singapore, Shanghai American School, China. These are all incredibly prestigious institutions, which I'm sure you're aware of. I fully expect our school district to heavily publicize this amazing accomplishment across all of our PR and media platforms. In addition, I certainly hope there is a PR strategy implemented to cover Croton Harmon High School's Croton Securities Council as they continue to compete in the semifinals. Secondly, I received the superintendent's report earlier this afternoon, and I couldn't figure out why it did not mention, highlight, or discuss anything academic. What is going on here? Every superintendent's report should be addressing our academic standards. I would really like to know or hear from someone on the board from this specific topic about academic standards appearing in our superintendent reports each and every time. Thank you. Within the next 72 hours. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for hearing in the public? I will close hearing in the public. We'll move on to item 2.3, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Anna. Again, good evening again, everybody. I want to echo first Anna's comments about Josh and Theo. It has been and continues to be an honor to serve for this school district community. Really, thank you for continuing to be such amazing stewards of this amazing school district community. So thank you. I also want to thank again Donald, Jake, and Adeline for sharing their talents in this setting with us tonight. They all agreed that it was actually much less nerve-wracking than performing in front of 587 of their peers at the end of last week. But one of, I think, a joyous moment in a board meeting like this, and a reminder of why we all do this work. So thank you again for sharing your talents with us. I thought I'd begin tonight, since the board time at the last work session last week, discussing their goals. I thought I would take a couple minutes to share my thinking around mine for 2025. And Greg, thank you for spending the time as always in putting together the presentation. So I want to begin just by sharing kind of my broad thinking around essential themes related to these goals, as they are, of course, interrelated with, but slightly different than district goals, building goals, and board goals. And so for me, it's fundamentally about how these 5 areas help me to focus my thinking around how we implement the vision map, getting the system to think differently beyond the single year trajectory and goals, and how we start thinking from a multi-year perspective and looking longer term about continuing to shepherd the work of the vision map here in years to come. And then, of course, alignment with and a common, I think, theme around district and building goals as it relates to the thinking that I'm doing. So 5 goals, which frankly were maybe 1 or 2 more than I would normally like, but I think this is an exceptionally complex and important time for us as a system, and so I think all 5 of these are essential for my office and the system to be thinking about. The first is thinking about leadership related to the re-envisioning and enhancement of professional learning in the system. Again, all of these are multi-year thoughts and aspirations. To me, this is really fundamentally about the idea of faculty learning with and from each other, right? And furthering a paradigm shift in the system that takes us from a system that thought mostly externally about where professional learning came from, and shifting that toward the idea that the most valuable, long-lasting professional learning comes from colleagues learning from other colleagues. And so how we create a system and a culture where that is a fundamental part of the experience, and not just new colleagues in their first and second year. And so obviously this year we implemented what is a first for our district in colleague and faculty driven and led study groups. And so a lot of time from many people has gone into the thinking and the implementation of those. And so obviously we want to be involved now in the regular review of those and taking a look at where they can go and how we continue to grow those with our colleagues from the CTA. We've done a tremendous amount of work over the past couple of years and will continue to in reimagining the new teacher academy program. We really see that as making good on the promise that we make to all new faculty as they enter our system. And when we talk about wanting genuine collaboration and creativity and innovation in the system, we need to make sure that their initial professional learning experiences reflect that. So there's been some real paradigm shifts in how that program behaves for new faculty. And so we want to support the continued work with Jenny and Erica at PBC, who do such a phenomenal job of making that program come to life. As I think the community also hopefully well knows, with regard to annual professional performance review, we're one of 2 out of approximately 700 public school districts in the state that have received a variance from the state to think differently and innovatively and creatively by the PPR. And so obviously we want to continue to make that a driving force behind how faculty feel about thoughtful risk-taking and their continued professional growth and their trajectory of improvement as professionals. And so want to continue our good work and thinking around that. We have also spent some time and will continue to spend time thinking through and then implementing a different paradigm for summer curriculum development. In prior years, it's been kind of a free-for-all in terms of what areas faculty were prioritizing at an individual department or building level. I think that served the system well, but as we think about how we can more systemically implement the vision map, what we're shifting to is prioritizing those specific district goals related to the vision map and how they then align with summer curriculum planning. So for this summer, it'll be designing and implementing interdisciplinary cross grade level learning experiences, master scheduling innovations, and assessment and grading, as well as other district priorities, as the board knows, related to things like science and math curriculum. So by communicating with the faculty that those are the areas we're going to be most systemically supporting, we think that will then better align kind of the longer term goals of the system with how we spend that valuable summertime with our faculty in promoting their development. And finally, obviously, we want to continue to develop and refine the pedagogical coaching model, looking potentially through some upcoming budget conversations to think about how that can look at PVC. The coaching model comes up in some other goals as well, but that's been over the past couple of years part of a real, again, sea change in how we think about professional learning in the system and creating those kind of systemic, embedded, longer term professional mentoring and modeling for faculty. That would be goal number 1. These are in no particular order. Second, re-envisioning the district committee structure to engage with our parent and family community. The committee structure, as I understand it, certainly predates me, I think by several years, perhaps 2, if not more, strategic plans. And so what's happened is the system has had kind of standing committees for many, many years. And while that I think served the system well for a long time, what tends to happen when that occurs is that there's some staleness and lack of innovation that occurs because the vision changes for the system. And we go from here are the things we're prioritizing to conversations about what do you want to prioritize. And that's when kind of the system loses its focus and sometimes the committees lose their focus and their energy. And so in thinking about that structure with our team, what we're looking for is to develop a structure for our multiple stakeholder groups, families, parents, students, and faculty to come together as what we would envision kind of more ad hoc work groups, where it might be a specific group focused on the element of the vision map related to assessment and feedback, or interdisciplinary course design, or master scheduling innovations, so that as you sign up for this, you know exactly what the work's going to be. It's prioritized around what the district's vision is, and then it can be modified from there based on where the vision map heads. But it's I think a fundamental shift in how we think about the committee structure, and one that would kind of first involve bringing back together the vision of the team that put together the vision map to begin with. Right? It's been amazingly over 2.5 years now since that process began, and so we think as a team the time is right to bring that group of great thinkers back together with some new students, maybe Isabel, we might probably for that before you graduate. To see where we are, to brainstorm and thinking about what's our next level of work related to the vision map. And then to use that process to develop and think through some of those ad hoc committee groups and help to define priority areas for that work going forward. And then thinking about methods for sharing that work more broadly with the school district community, so it doesn't just live in those rooms, but has a broader impact on the system in general. Goal number 3 is thinking about, and we've talked about this related to a district goal as well. How do we, the people around me will say I say this too much, shift from 3 great schools to 1 amazing school district, right? There are times when we're both of those things. And in general, I think there's a continuum in school systems about how much of the work of the system is driven by the district office or by 1 or 2 offices within district office. And on that continuum, we've always trended toward what allows for kind of building level autonomy and principal and faculty autonomy. And that is a wonderful thing and something we want to continue, where we want to make sure that there are those ties that bind, especially as we think about the vision map, that as the buildings implement this work, they're implementing it in a way that feels authentic to them and developmentally appropriate to them, but still is aligned with those themes. So for example, pedagogical coaches, as we know, exist in 2 of our 3 buildings right now. That model looks different in this building in CET, but it has a couple of fundamental properties that were developed by the entire team. And so those properties are that we wanted to make sure that every pedagogical coach had their foot remain in teaching, meaning they were still at least a part-time teacher in addition to being a coach. And then in addition, every faculty member had access to a coach at some point during the school day. And so while CET's model looks different than the high school's model in that way, it works for both buildings, they're not identical, right? In some systems, they would demand that the coaching model look the same in every building. We aren't that system, we're proud of that. But from a cohesiveness standpoint, we want to make sure, especially if we develop PBC's model, they had a middle school specific model, but with those same foundational characteristics built in. Same thing as the board and community have seen with our master scheduling, whether it's Tiger Day, the house system, the 0 period of PBC, or what you've heard about and will be coming in 25, 26 at the high school. Those are different scheduling innovations, but still the cohesiveness of each of those buildings is involved in discussions around how the master scheduler can help to drive innovation in the system. So that work actually isn't insignificant in a system where you have passionate and thoughtful leaders who want to be able to move things in their own direction and have their own priorities. It takes a fair amount of work for us to make sure that everybody's on the same page, at least philosophically, and then allowing for some pretty broad guardrails for our building leaders and faculty to innovate within. 4th goal is developing leadership capacity across the system. I feel incredibly passionately about this one. I think this is when we think about why districts don't innovate long term and why directions in districts change so often and why you don't never see really long-term fundamental change in public schools is because the leaders change. And because there isn't often a lot of focus on developing internal leadership capacity with people who share that same vision. And so we have been and are continuing to spend a good deal of time identifying faculty members and members of the leadership team who share the vision of the work that's been happening here over the past few years, encouraging them to get into leadership programs, encouraging them to continue to advance their own impact in the system, providing, I think, some really thoughtful mentorship, coaching, and leadership opportunities for them. And this involves faculty from across the system who are exceptional in what they do and want to contribute in a broader level in the future, and see, of course, the desire to do it here. Find ways to keep that kind of talent here. And additionally, we think about members of the leadership team who are here and part of the work now. How do we help get them out of what in some cases are real silos? Right? There's in a lot of systems, the function of district office and the function of building leadership are really different things. And so decisions get made in district office without principals. Decisions get made by principals without other principals, without district office, whether it's hiring and instructional decisions. So we've, I think, challenged a lot of that and now do hiring, for example, as much bigger administrative teams. We talked about that last year, beginning at CET, where we had high school administration, district office administration working as a team throughout the entire hiring process at CET. That worked so well that we're now going to do that across the system. And it puts leaders in places where they get a chance to learn from each other. We talk a lot about teacher elbow to elbow collaboration. This is what we see as administrator elbow to elbow collaboration, and learning from each other, contributing to the work of each other's buildings or departments, and growing from that and having some really rich discussions about it. One of the other things we've changed for this year that we want to kind of see how it works in the system is when we have building level meetings with principals and assistant principals. It used to be essentially John and I with the principal and assistant principal. Now we bring a whole team of people together once a month with some really robust agendas, and it allows us to kind of challenge each other's thinking, to advance each other's philosophies, and then to come to consensus around ideas that we can all go out and support and contribute to. And it allows for some more of that cohesiveness in the system, because what happens at PVC very much affects what happens at CHHS and CET and across the system. And so our principals need to not only know what's happening, but be a part of developing that philosophy, be in the room when those conversations are happening. And it allows for kind of conversations and presentations, work sessions, but more importantly, what happens in the system itself. I had a chance to attend a recent parent meeting at CET where they were talking about Tiger Day. And that was a very effective presentation. One of the things that was most meaningful to me was Carrie and Craig were able to stand in front of those parents and say, here's what this looks like at PVC. Here's what this innovation looks like at CHHS. This isn't solely a CET innovation. This is how the entire K-12 system is thinking about this work. And I think it's important from a leadership standpoint for our principals to be able to do that, but also for our parents to be able to understand that their kids are moving through a system where there is a similar cohesiveness and philosophy, and it comes because of these kinds of efforts. And finally, thinking again, this is a muscle that a lot of systems don't utilize very much, but thinking about things in a multi-year trajectory. I've said it many times, there's so much whiplash in systems where every late August or September, everyone comes back and says, okay, what are we doing now? Let's do it. And so how do we have to change our thinking about the system every 10 or 12 months? And you can't get long-term growth in a system when that's the philosophy. So what we've done over the past couple of years, and now I think we need to continue to push harder on, is everything we do needs to be in the context of what's next. And what does this allow us to think about in terms of the next step in the system? Goal setting, building goals, as you've seen, district goals, my goals. I was thrilled to hear the board thinking about that same way. Longer term goal setting, not September to June, but September through June of 2 and 3 years from now. Right? Us always being able to say, we can envision a time when, and then finish that sentence. So the faculty, the community, the staff, the students know where it is we're heading. Agree or disagree is a different conversation, but at least there's clarity around what the vision is. As well as class development and budget planning. You'll hear a bit tonight, but I think certainly more through the rest of the process about multi-year thinking around the budget. As you hear from the high school and PVC and CET about their curricular planning, their class planning, it's always in the context of multi-year thinking. And so all of these things, I think, thematically are about trying to get genuine longevity in the system and continue the momentum that's been built here over the past many years, harness it thoughtfully, and then move it forward. Questions on those? Greg, you want to shift to the next one? Thank you, sir. Okay, so as always, it's my pleasure and honor to get a chance to, and I'll do it quickly tonight because of how many other things we have on the agenda. Highlight some of the phenomenal work that our students and student athletes, student musicians, student performers are engaged in and involved in. Beginning with the MLK Day of Service, which is a first-time event at CHHS, coordinated by a number of different members of the faculty. I want to make sure I give them all credit. Kirby Mosenthal, Pam Morrison, Carrie Tracy, Jody Berger, Amy Yanarelli, Zohan Nadeem, and Stephanie Southwick, who came together with an idea that we would utilize that moment in time of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday to engage with interested students around concepts of service, learning about Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, and then beginning to plan and develop a service project that will come to fruition in the spring. And so when we think about students as leaders, as advocates, as part of building a better, again, it sounds trite, but it's true, it sounds trite, but it's true, a better future for all of us, these are the kind of opportunities that we want to make sure that our young people have. So I give tremendous credit to those faculty members and to those students. They had a chance to spend some of the time that day at the Croton Library, and doing some planning and some good learning, and we can't wait to see what the fruits of that labor bear for all of us this spring. Also had a chance to attend the CHHS Winter Concert, which took place in the gym, as we know, as the auditorium reaches its the conclusion of the work there. I frankly was a little concerned about the acoustics, but I thought our kids sounded phenomenal that night. They sounded great. So great credit to them, to Sarah O'Brien, of course, to Michael Katzman, to Jazz Zante. Made the best of a challenging situation. It was a really, really great night of some wonderful musicianship and a wonderful turnout and support for our Tiger students. So thank you to everybody involved in that. Also wanted to give a quick shout out to our athletic program, Tiger basketball camp and weight training. Christine Drago continues to do an excellent job in trying to build programs from the ground up, meaning the elementary school up, and creating opportunities for young Tiger students in our community to look up to student athletes at PVC in the high school and say, well, I would love to be a basketball player like them someday. I'd love to be like Vin Flynn or Wente, and have an opportunity to look at kids and think, I want to be a part of that kind of team environment when I'm older. That's how you build programs, and this is a wonderful example of it. So thank you to Christine, to our coaches, to our student athletes, and to our young Tigers and their families for being a part of that. Also, of course, the system celebrated Lunar New Year, another great kind of cross-building collaboration where students from our Mandarin program visited CET to teach some of our CET students and me. I hope they taught the students much more successfully than they taught me, but some challenging Mandarin and Chinese writing. But really just an exciting day for our faculty and staff and students to get a chance to celebrate that holiday. Also had the chance to attend the second annual, this is the collaboration between Tracy Feynman and Rob Keane, second annual Science Research Symposium. Similar theme to the idea of what we just discussed in terms of athletics, helping younger students in the system to be able to look up to the work and the work ethic of students who are above them in the system. And that's how you grow, for example, in this case, the science research. So this was a great opportunity for our high school students to get a chance to practice their presentation in front of some really engaged young people and answer some questions in real time from peers, and for our students at PVC to learn from our high school students about some stunningly complex research. Once again, it's amazing when our kids are involved in learning, and it's always a challenge for me to try to figure out how to ask intelligent questions
Same.
of these kinds of incredibly complex topics. So thank you again to Tracy and to Rob for their collaboration, for taking this thoughtful risk last year and then growing it this year. This, I think, undoubtedly will become a regular part of the system now. Also had a chance to celebrate and want to congratulate Henry and Jonathan, two Section 1 wrestling champions. Outstanding job by both of them, and to the entire wrestling team, and to Coach Pacello. Also the ski team, Gabby and Kai. Kai's in my chat. Shout out to the Walker Drago chat. Great job by both of them competing in sectionals for a spot in the States. And we also I want to celebrate our first ever female wrestling championship, which was yesterday at the Westchester County Center, where we had, of course, two of our Tiger female wrestlers take part in again, what is a history-making event in a time for girls wrestling in our region. So congratulations to all of our Tiger athletes as they wrap up the winter season. That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I am going to rely on my Trustee Neil Haber. There seems to be a mistake in the agenda and that there isn't a placeholder for the official student report. So what do we have to do to amend the agenda? To add,
I would say, I don't really think we need to do anything because we're not voting. So why don't we just say, as a part of the superintendent's report, he is going to
this is why I asked you. This is why I
enable
asked.
Isabel to tell us everything we need to know.
And now for the highlighted superintendent's report, Isabel.
Okay, so, it's mic on. Can you hear me? Okay, so before we begin, this is a little personal note, but I did mention last time, that the seniors were getting their cheese mentors, so I'm happy to report that I got Mr. Walker. So we have some exciting things, but I know a lot of the seniors are really excited about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, this was a little while back, but on January 22nd, we had our incoming ninth grade orientation. So rising freshmen and their families were given a presentation on what to expect at their time at CHUFSD. And then they walked around to different departments and got to ask questions, which I thought was really cute. On January 24th, we had, as Mr. Walker said, a winter concert. It was really successful. I think we all did really well. And then we were in the gym. It was a nice moment. It was my last winter concert. But I will say it's been a great time at CHHS and all of the schools actually doing the violin. And then the CHHS ping pong tournament, which is an SFC thing, we're doing our preparations, but we have a date set. It's for March 20th, 2025. And proceeds of the tournament will go to the Greg Rodriguez Fund, which supports our students the traveling and school-based trips and programs like that. Speaking of school-based trips, yesterday, a group of CHHS students set out on their trip to Spain. I believe they're going to Madrid today. And this was led by Ms. Baena and Ms. Glasenberg, so thank you to them. This is part of a wonderful exchange between two high schools that allows students to practice their language skills and explore abroad. And on the flip side, we will be receiving a group of 23 students and their advisors from a high school in La Rochelle, France, called Lycée Jean de Tête. And they will be guests of Croton families from February 24th to March 9th. And I will say I do love the program as I did travel last year, and that's it.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Moving on to item 2.4, Assistant Superintendent for Business, Denise Harrington Cohen, will give an update on the 2025-2026 revenue budget.
Good evening. So tonight we are going to discuss our preliminary revenue budget. Thank you. You sure I can't use it?
It's come on.
Okay. No, I feel a little safety. So tonight, our agenda for this evening, first we're going to review the governor's executive proposal and state aid proposal. We're going to look at a state aid comparison for the district. Based on her proposal, we're going to review the property tax cap terminology and calculation and our revenue budget recap overall, and then discuss some advocacy and next steps. We'll begin with an overview of the governor's budget that was released on January 21st of last month. Overall, we're looking at a 3.6% increase in spending. Current fiscal year surplus is about 3.5 billion, which is fairly healthy compared to last year's. Proposed balance budget for the year, there's a gap of about 4 billion. And over a 2-year period, that's 7.4 billion, though these numbers are at risk considering what's going on at the federal level and the potential implications of holdback of federal funding. I think New York State receives 5.5 billion in federal funding, so that's a big chunk of money. So state aid, what her initiatives were for state aid. So she's recommending a $1.7 billion increase, which is about 4.8%. Safe harmless provision is preserved, so that was at risk. Croton Harmon is a safe harmless district, which means that if the formula reduces our foundation aid for any reason, that we would be held at the previous year's level, so that was preserved. We're looking at a minimum of 2% increase to foundation aid, which is our largest aid category. So a study was initiated called the Rockefeller Study to look at the integrated formula for foundation aid. The study brought back some recommendations, some were implemented, most were not, just because of the complexity of the formula and the diversity of the school districts in New York State. One item that was well received was that the 2000 census poverty data, so that's a factor in the formula, that is now being replaced by SAFE, which is small area income and poverty estimates. That's a dynamic number, so that number will change year to year, which allows for adequate growth in that portion of the formula. Also, free reduced lunch is replaced by economically disadvantaged data that's applied to the state on an annual basis. And the maximum sharing ratio, which is another component of the formula, was increased from 91% to 93%. As far as other recommendations, universal meals, there's a recommendation to add an additional $160 million to the budget as a subsidy for the state to subsidize the balance of the federal funding for school lunch. It is right now, as it's proposed, it only applies to school districts participating in the National School Lunch Program, which we are. There are more than a handful of districts within the county, especially that do not participate. They, at this point, would not be eligible for that funding. And the logistics of that have not yet been shared. Also, distraction-free learning, which requires districts to adopt a policy banning the use of cell phones during the day. There's a $13.5 million allocation for storage devices and other items that might assist districts in enforcing this recommendation.
Maybe we can use the acrylic leftover.
Exactly, it's just, all I think about are COVID screens.
Yeah. To encase the smartphone.
That's right.
We can get the sign. And we interrupt you.
No. So these are state aid projections. Again, foundation aid, our largest aid category, is expected to increase by 2%, which is equivalent to about $100,000. Transportation aid, our transportation aid factor has gone up slightly, along with our expenses, so we're looking to see approximately an additional $64,000 there. Transportation aid and building aid are both, and BOCES aid are both expense-based aid. So the aid that's generated is based on our previous year's expenditures. And there is no talk about modifying that formula at the moment. Most of our other aid categories are fairly steady, with the exception of building aid, which we are seeing almost an $800,000 increase in building aid, and that is a result of our future facilities plan. So as we progress through the plan, we will then ban or bond the financing of that and then receive comparable aid to offset that cost. So we are looking at about $800,000 in building aid.
Just so we can understand that, we're looking at an additional $800,000 of state aid for portions of the future facilities project that have been done, that we will file final cost estimates sometime in the next few months, and money will be coming back in 2025-26.
To offset the increase in our debt service. So our debt service is up about 900,000 this year, and that is the offset. Hence our budget neutral project.
I was gonna say, like, that's planned for,
Yes,
when we
Yes.
issued, or started the facilities work. That was the initial plan, that this debt would be, a portion of that would be covered by.
Sure. I mean, the one point about that is that we've completed enough work, even with whatever delays and snafus we have had, that we will, based on your best estimation, be able to
file those.
file and get money within this upcoming fiscal year.
It's going to be all hands on deck, because we have about 20 reports to file, based on how many projects we have just related to the future facilities plan.
Thank you.
The difference in BOCES was, anything significant?
This is, an expectation that just a slightly lower, amount of services. And that number changes, that number is generally off. A little bit,
I mean, based on what happens during the course of the.
right? Okay, try to keep everyone awake for this portion of the presentation, except for Omar.
Never seen Omar more.
So we have the, just as some lingo and some terminology here. So the property tax cap, three critical numbers that we go by in the formula. So tax levy limit before exclusions. That's the highest possible tax levy a district can propose prior to exclusions. It requires simple majority, 50% plus one. A supermajority is needed if you exceed the tax levy limit. The tax levy is reported to the state controllers every year prior to March 1st. The maximum allowable tax levy includes exclusions. So as you'll see in the next portion of a couple of slides down, the exclusions that are within the prescribed formula for allowable exclusions. Oh, one back. Proposed tax levy, that's the amount of money requested through the levy, through the prescribed formula that the district can levy for their school budget. Thanks, Greg. So as some of you know, who a lot of you have been here for quite a while, so Chapter 97 of the laws of 2011 implemented the tax cap formula in 2012, 2013. It went on for about 5 years. It was being voted upon annually, and then in 2018 it became permanent. The law restricts the amount that school districts can levy and increase their taxes. The property tax levy limits the school district's levy, not assessments. So assessments and tax rates are determined by the town assessors. So for us, it's Portland and Yorktown. The levy amount is apportioned throughout both of those jurisdictions. Voters approve the budget, not the tax levy, because again, that's a prescribed formula by the New York State Controller's Office.
Can I just ask you, because it's been, discussed so recently, with, connection to housing in the district. Can you explain to me because I don't know, I'm asking, the difference between why the district levy and the village levy? Or the budget process there and how it differs, because they have suggested in the past that we can break our levy. I know I keep asking you this
Yeah,
question.
no. So municipalities are subject to different laws. School districts, in order to break, and I don't want to speak too much about the municipalities because I don't know exactly their process.
Sure.
But for a school district, in order for us to surpass the levy, we would need a 60% majority. On our budget.
And historically, it's not something that we have done as a district.
No, our district has always been at or below the levy.
Yeah, so to suggest that we could just do it, to access different funds for proposed
We could, I have to be honest, a lot of districts are talking about piercing the levy because now after 10+ years, the compounding effect of that restricted revenue. I mean, our tax levy is our biggest source of revenue and it's one of our only, it's taxes and state aid. So if you're continually restricting that over time, the compounding effect of seeing inflation up here and growth in your revenue source down here, it's beginning to impact districts significantly. And I guarantee you that more districts are going to begin to pierce the cap. Also with the loss of ESSER funding and the growth of inflation over time.
And that impact would be felt by,
That so if you were to pierce the levy, that would mean that the levy, let's say the levy was 45 million and you needed to bring it to 46 million to balance your budget. That million would be dispersed equally among the assessments within your jurisdiction. So.
Just want to add one other thing about the difference, is school districts are the only municipality or public entity in the state that requires the vote of the public. All municipalities and other public entities are subject to the 60% for override. For the village, that decision is made by a board that consists of 5 people.
Yeah.
So the village, by a majority vote of the board, can override the tax levy cap. And on the village board agenda yesterday was a resolution to authorize the village to, I'll call it, break the tax levy cap. Doesn't mean the village is going to do that, but they have gotten authorization by a vote of the village board, not the public, but the village board, to have that ability if they desire. We could only do it by saying this is a budget we propose and we need support of 60% of the voters at the annual meeting.
What is their cap, Neil?
I don't even know what the cap is.
Their cap is also 2%.
Yeah, well, it'd be 2%, and I don't know the degree to which the adjustments that you're gonna talk about in a moment apply to the village, but they basically said, we're going to assume that authority because we can do it by majority vote. And so we don't even need to say anything other than perhaps explaining why they've gone over whatever the cap is that applies to them, you know, and before they vote as the village board to adopt that budget, and then that information will be available to the voters if the voters desire to do something about it. So that's the major difference between the village, the town, the county, and school districts like ours.
Okay. Thank you. So here we have the tax cap formula. We begin always with the prior year levy. So this number is critical because as I mentioned, over the years, some districts have, including ours at periods of time, have lowered the tax cap to, for example, during COVID, difficult times, lowered the tax cap. Once they lower the tax cap, even if your allowable levy is, let's say, 40 million and you bring it to 39 million, that 39 million is your starting point, not what was allowed, it was what you utilized. So that is also restricted growth. So we started with the prior year levy and we multiply that by the tax-based growth factor. Tax-based growth factor is brick and mortar development within the community, any quantity change factor. New housing, enhancements to properties that would increase their assessments, any measurable improvements within the taxable boundaries. So this year it's 1.0040. That is down from last year, which was 1.0059. So that's valued at, that's a loss of about 85,000. Then we have, this is the prior year portion. Then we have pilots from prior year. So last year was our first year for pilot, and pilots are payments in lieu of taxes. It is an agreement that is made between a developer and the village or town that waives the tax value of that property and implements a pilot. So we were in the early stages, so that amount was a little bit overstated than our actual pilot amount, but it was brought in at 70. It materialized at about 44,000, you should see lower in the formula. Incidentally, as it relates to last year when that 70,000 was booked, it actually lowered the tax base a bit. So if it were 44, it would have been, tax base would have been slightly higher, but we had only estimates from the village at that point.
And if you could, because it was my understanding, our understanding, that the pilot payment to the district under the agreement that was signed by the village and the developer, talking about Maple Common, was 70,000 that we should receive year one, plus 3%, a 3% bump each year for the 20-year life of the pilot, after which 30, after which it would go to full valuation. Why is that number 44,702 instead of 72,100?
Because in speaking with the village, that there were other entities that 70,000 was apportioned to. So it was apportioned to the village.
Okay, yeah, so basically the 70,000
was not all
total, and since our taxes are,
portion.
a portion like 57% or 60% or whatever of property taxes paid, that's why it's 44, and we would anticipate that next year it'll be 3% higher than that.
And that's what we are.
And 3% and 3%. Okay, thank you.
So then we take prior year capital levy exclusions multiplied by the allowable growth factor. So the allowable growth factor is the lesser of 2% for inflation. So if inflation is 3%, we are held to the 2% allowable tax levy. If inflation is 1%, we are held to 1%. Pilots current year, then we take pilots for the current year out, which is 44,702, any available carryover from prior year, and then that becomes our levy limit before exclusions. And I apologize, I normally have this on one slide, which can help me show you a critical piece of the formula, but I'll go back. So the capital tax levy exclusion for the current year is 2.8 million. And again, that is our debt service. That's what we pay out for our debt, less our building aid. Greg, if you could just go, hold on one second. So look at line 9, which is 2,836,000. And Greg, if you can go back to line 4, it's 2,714,000. Those two numbers are very critical within the formula, because any variation, if we have 2 million one year and then 4 million the next year, it will cause a spike in the levy for 1 year, and then it will cause a downward spike in the next year. So it's really difficult to manage your revenue and finances when you have those spikes. So we aim to maintain those two at or about the same level, if at all possible. You can go back, thanks, Greg. Then there is a capital exclusion for pension expenses that are increased by more than 2%, which is not the case this year, so there's no exclusion for that. Bringing us to a total tax levy limit of 45,422,572. That is 2.6% increase to the levy, valued at 1.160203. Is the district planning to override the cap? No.
Or actually, we're not seeking to receive voter approval to override the cap.
Well, it's the budget, so, yes. Did you have a question?
Always.
Okay.
Always, I don't know if it's.
Oh, did it always?
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I think at some point. You may want to give us some thoughts about what we might anticipate. And maybe it's later on, and I'm trying to just tell me, in terms of effect of any decrease that might occur in federal aid. And how that might affect the discussions, like you just said, no intention as of now to recommend a budget with a tax levy, percentage increase greater than 2.6%. But I think we should all, as board members and members of the public, just kind of be aware of what potential consequences could be, as you've seen them and as your colleagues have heard about them.
So we receive approximately $1 million in federal funding between our school lunch program and our title grants. And why am I missing one? School lunch, title grants, 611, and one other.
Is it universal pre-K? No.
And universal, thank you. Universal pre-K, yes. Show off. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so about, and none of those three programs currently appear to be at risk, fortunately. But thank you for bringing that up. So this is just a couple of years in review of our inflation factors and allowable growth levy. So as you see, 2021, our inflation was 1.23%. That became our allowable growth factor. So we're constrained when it's low and we're constrained when it's high. The dark gray line is inflation, and the shorter orange line is our allowable growth. So as you can see, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, we've managed to deal with inflation on the expenditure side and stagnation on the revenue side. Then our tax-based growth factor. So you can see there was a spike, around COVID, a little after, and then a sharp decline again. And then again, this year, we're seeing another decline.
Essentially level with 2023, right?
Yeah. Yep. So our revenue budget projections, so we're, payments in lieu of taxes is down slightly. County sales tax has held strong. This was just, such a relief to school districts, has really held strong even throughout COVID. We're expecting that to be slightly higher this year. Interest earnings, we are projecting it higher only because our projections last year were lower than interest rates. Interest rates were much higher than expected. So our projection last year was low. Even though it's 50,000 above last year, we are still factoring in the fact that we are expecting interest rates to drop a little. And we have building use fees, other revenue, expecting a total non-state aid increase of 219,000. State aid, we're looking at $869,000 increase. And then we have appropriated fund balance and reserves that are utilized to offset expenditures and to balance budget shortfalls. Those numbers will be determined once we determine the final budget value to offset that. Last year, we designated approximately 3.7 in reserves and fund balance. We have strong reserves in our district, and we will be utilizing those undoubtedly in the years ahead. The allowable growth factor, again, was a 1.16 million increase in revenue. So some advocacy opportunities. So many of these are coming from ASBO, which is the Association of School Business Officials. There are so many, as you know, who sit on advocacy, so many initiatives. I apologize if I didn't put one here. Right now, we're talking mostly about finances and operations. So revisions to the tax cap, making the allowable growth factor greater than 2% or the change in CPI. Adopting regulations addressing changes in the taxable status and calculation of the tax-based growth factor, which, as you know, we've seen growth, yet the rate has gone down because of formulas that have existed for many years. Restoring the growth aid formula. So previously there was a growth aid formula that allowed districts who had spikes in enrollment to have their aid adjusted in the current year in which they had to provide services and make adjustments for that growth increase. So there's advocacy to return to that. Increase in the $30,000 salary cap for career and tech education to provide opportunities for students seeking careers in that area. Electric bus transition, updated building aid allowances to allow for infrastructure needs, establishing policy to support districts with the implementation challenges, which are many, and extended timeline for implementation. And there was no discussion about that this year, yet many districts are concerned about how they can meet those deadlines. And then lastly, extend the public sector retiree waiver, which is set to expire in June, and that reduces the maximum allowable earnings of a previously retired state employee, so that we can garner some of that experience and knowledge back in our districts. There's a shortage of business officials, there's a shortage of superintendents, there's a shortage of principals, so allowing that to occur would be helpful. So next steps, we will monitor the legislative budget proposal, which has typically been better than the executive budget. That's expected in March. Monitor state budget development and federal initiatives, which could impact the governor's budget. Review school building and department requests. We are meeting regularly with our building leaders and directors to review their budgets. Prepare fund balance projections and continually assess our current year performance. And then finally, review enrollment projections, which we'll talk about in a moment, and staffing needs for 25-26. So our next budget presentation will be on the 27th, and we'll do general support, operations, and propositions. So operations is buildings and grounds and transportations. Then we'll go on The March, vision math, technology and athletics, school buildings, curriculum, instruction, and pupil personnel. March is a really fun budget month. And then April, we'll have the superintendent's proposed budget, our budget adoption, property tax cap adoption, and the BOCES administrative budget vote. Followed by the public budget hearing on May 8th and our public vote on May 20th, and trustee election and our tenure celebration. Always visit us on the web, at our website, or if you have any questions about the budget, you can email me at budget.questions@chuffsd.org.
Can trustees do that? I'm just kidding.
And that concludes my presentation. Anyone has any questions?
So a quick question about school meals. So you mentioned that there's money in the federal line to fund some school lunches. And then there's the proposal in the executive budget for state level money for, I think it's universal school lunch. So how do those two interact? Are they
So
separate? Or
how they interact now is that students who are eligible for free and reduced meals, there's really no reduced any longer because the state subsidized that. So if you're eligible through a direct certification, Medicaid, SNAP, or otherwise, or if you file an application with the district and your income meets those guidelines, then you become free and reduced. The federal government pays a portion of your meal, and then the balance that they don't pay is reimbursed by the state. What the state is proposing is that it would not only include those eligible students, but it would include all students. So right now, some districts under the CEP option, community eligibility provision, I believe is the term. Those districts currently now have free meals for all because their proportion of eligible students is greater than, for example, Providence. So once you reach a certain level, you become CEP eligible.
so that federal money would still be used for the eligible student population?
Yes, and then the state
Pick up the
would
rest.
balance.
It would require that we would still need to submit that paperwork for.
Oh, yes, that and more.
So that's,
Yes.
right, so the federal government picks up that portion
Right.
and then the state's only responsible.
So the bottom line for families and students will be, if the state's proposal is adopted, we will have no charging. We will not charge our students. This doesn't go to faculty and staff, they still have to pay, but we'll be charging nothing for students for the meals. And we will just have to, I guess, monitor what the cost is of the meal so that we can get reimbursement from the state,
That's
but no money out of pocket for our students.
That does not include Snapple and chips. So it's just a eligible meal.
Right.
Yeah, I think, do we have Christina? Is she here? Oh, there she is.
Hi, can you hear me?
So this is Christina Vegas. Christina works with Suffolk, Western Suffolk BOCES. She's one of the demographers there. And Christina's going to walk us through the methodology, the demographic report, talk a little bit about our historical perspective, and then talk about our projections moving forward. So thank you so much for coming, Christina.
So this
Thank
is moving on to item 3.1,
Yes.
the demographic study.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you for your patience, Christina.
No problem. Okay. So you don't need my notes. I don't know if you need to make it bigger or not, but it's up to you. I don't know if there's a way to do without it, but it's okay. either way. That's okay, as long as you can see it.
There we go.
Perfect. So again, thank you for having me. On behalf of the Croton Harmon Union Free School District, the Western Suffolk BOCES Office of School Planning and Research conducted this study to assess recent demographic factors and enrollment trends to prepare projections through the 2033-2034 school year. Since 1985, the Office of School Planning and Research has completed more than 1,400 studies for districts throughout New York State. We help districts plan for the future by preparing comprehensive long-range planning studies. These reports research, review, and analyze demographic trends and historical enrollment patterns to develop student enrollment projections for the district. Studies have been completed for districts in Dutchess, Nassau, Orange, Putnam, Rockland, Suffolk, Westchester, and other New York State counties. So here we see the key components typically involved in a study. It is divided into two main sections, demographics and enrollment. The demographics section focuses on various factors, including birth rates, housing data, population statistics, and the enrollment figures for non-public and charter schools. These elements are essential in understanding the broader context and background of the populations being studied. The enrollment section focuses on the trends observed over the past 10 years, the patterns of student migration from one grade to the next, and analysis of birth persistence. These aspects are crucial in tracking and predicting changes in student enrollment over time. By analyzing both components, we then calculate projected enrollment over the next 10 years by district, school, and grade level. Here we see the accuracy of Western Suffolk BOCES enrollment projections from the 22-23 school year. As you can see, the projected K-12 enrollment was 1,525 students, which matches the actual enrollment, resulting in the 100% accuracy rate. On the next slide, the chart shows the accuracy rate for enrollment projections from the 23-24 school year. The projected K-12 enrollment was 1,534 students, while the actual enrollment was slightly higher at 1,571, resulting in a difference of 37 students and an accuracy rate of 97.6%. The chart also provides a breakdown of enrollment by grade configuration, comparing the actual versus the projected numbers. In order to ensure we're using the most accurate and up-to-date data, these are some of the research sources that we use. Just give you a second. And now we'll move on to the demographics. So this graph shows Westchester County recorded 12,799 births in 2001. Since then, we can see that births declined more than 21%, with slightly more than 10,000 births recorded in 2021. Although there was a slight increase compared to the previous year, the lowest level of this historical period was in 2020, where there was 9,634 births recorded. During the historical period from 2008 to 2021, the number of births within the school district has fluctuated within 64 births in 2011 and 98 births in 2017. The current data shows that there were 81 births in the 2021 in the school district. This shows the district resident population has showed a steady increase from 2000 with 8,667 residents to 2020 with 9,667 residents. So here we see the age structure of the resident population. So from 2010 to 2020, we see that the resident population age has shifted. The segment of residents aged 19 years or younger decreased from 27.3% to 25.4%, while the share of senior residents aged 65 and up has grown from 14.7% to 19.3%. The median age of residents in the district increased from 44.2 years in 2010 to 45.1 years in 2020. We also see that housing turnover in the school district was at the lowest during the historical period in 2014 when 88 units were sold. Subsequently, sales have fluctuated with a peak of 156 units sold in 2021, and as of 2022, 118 sales were recorded. We also see that the median sale price increased to $777,250 in 2022. This is the highest level of the historical period and reflects an increase of more than 16% compared to the prior year. And now we'll move on to enrollment. This chart shows there was an overall loss of 9,973 students enrolled in Westchester County school districts from 2013 to 2023. Now let's look at enrollment at the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District. This slide presents both historical and projected student enrollment trends in the district over a 20-year period. The graph shows that historical enrollment peaked at 1,701 students in 2013 school year before beginning a steady decline. Between 2013 and 2023, there was a loss of 130 students. Looking forward, the projected enrollment from 2024 to 2033 suggests more of a steady trend with an anticipated gain of 22 students, bringing the total to 1,593 students by 2033. This slide provides a detailed breakdown of the previous data specifically for grades K through 4. The historical data from 2013 to 2023 shows an enrollment high of 627 students and a low of 551 students, resulting in an overall loss of 37 students over that historical enrollment period. Looking ahead, the projected enrollment for 2024 to 2033 shifts with a high of 617 students in 2028 and a projected low of 578 students in 2033, including a further loss of 12 students. This slide illustrates the enrollment trends for grades 5 through 8 from 2013 to 2033. The historical enrollment data from 2013 to 2023 shows a high of 534 students and a low of 472 students, resulting in an overall loss of 61 students during the historical period. The projected enrollment for 2024 to 2033 fluctuates, with a low of 457 students in 2025 and a high of 520 students in 2029, indicating an overall gain of 31 students during the projected 10 years. Here we see enrollment trends for grades 9 through 12 from 2013 to 2033. The historical enrollment data from 2013 to 2023 shows a high of 540 students and a low of 475 students, resulting in an overall loss of 32 students during the historical period. The projected enrollment for 2024 to 2033 indicated a continued decline. However, a small gain in 2033 results with an overall gain of 3 students for grades 9 through 12. Here we see new housing projects in the district. So there were 3 projects that are currently in the works. 25 South Riverside Avenue apartments are anticipated to yield 7 students. 43 and 45 Maple Street are anticipated 18 students. And Lot A, as we're calling it, is anticipated to have 11 students. These anticipated students are not included in the totals for the projections because we do not know specifically what grades they will be in, and we don't know for sure how many students will be there, but we like to project these anticipated students so that the district has an idea of what's going on in the future. And now let's just look at some factors impacting the projected enrollment. So the district enrollment peaked in 2013 when 1,701 students were enrolled, and losses have been recorded in 6 of the last 10 years. Kindergarten enrollment ranged within 100 and 118 students in all but 3 years of the historical period. There are currently 127 students enrolled. Kindergarten cohorts are expected to range between 111 and 118 students during the next 5 years. Subsequently, enrollment is projected to be slightly lower level, ranging from 100 to 112 students each year between 2029 and 2033. The incoming kindergarten class was smaller than the exiting 12th grade class of the previous year in 8 of the last 10 years. This trend is expected to continue in 8 of the next 10 years, with losses between 3 and 19 students expected in those years. Migration ratios show year-to-year fluctuations. On average, the district gains or maintains students transitioning to most grades 1 through 8 and grade 12. However, their average losses are recorded in transition to grades 9, 10, and 11. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Christina. Any questions?
Couple of questions that I have, which is one of the things that I noted is that when you go back to slide 16, slide 15, but slide 15 indicated that in the past 5 years between 2018 and 2023, in the county, there was probably about a 2.5% decrease in the number of students enrolled in schools of all schools in the county. During that same period of time, we had fluctuations, but we had no decrease. So I guess my question is, what is the basis for the conclusion that between 2023 and 2033, our enrollment will show a moderate decrease followed by a moderate increase, so that we will have 12 more students in 2020, 2033, as opposed to 2023. And I realize, as you, 22, rather, I'm sorry. And you said, of course, that this does not include any of the projections of the new projects in the district that are mentioned on slide 20. I really want to understand how we are able to, for our planning purposes, think that we're really not going to have to look at more sections, more staff in middle school and high school. How do we square that with the fact that we've had less loss than the county as a whole?
So we look at the trends. So what's great about the district is the migration ratio. So students are transitioning from one grade to the other, and there's not a big loss in those grades. There is some loss when it gets to the high school level. We do see students leaving the district between the grades 9, grades 9, 10, and 11, but it's very small losses. And you're actually gaining students in grades 1 through 8 and 12. So that kind of balances itself out. We are also looking at births in the specific district. And so when we calculate the births and we follow them through to kindergarten onto high school, we can see that there is going to be an increase or a steady level of enrollment because of those births. Whereas the births, let's say in the county, is going down, the births in the specific district is going up. So we can use that as well to project.
Could you please explain explain to us the methodology in projecting the new housing student numbers?
I'm sorry, the housing? I couldn't hear you.
The new housing, the impact of, you have estimates in terms of anticipated student yield for our new housing projects. I'd like to understand what went into calculating these estimates.
So
and how
we,
you numbers.
sure. So we use a Rutgers multiplier. So there's a formula already in place where you look at specifically the amount of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms that the apartments will have. You look at whether they're affordable units, whether they're rental, whether they're for purchase, and then using the Rutgers yield multiplier, you're able to determine how many students will come out of that.
There, my understanding is there are different multipliers that you can use. Is that not correct? Can you explain why you chose this one and what the exact number is?
So we've used this for a long time now. We've actually had housing projects in the state tell us that that's actually been the most accurate as well. And as you can see from our estimated projections for the district in the past, that it has worked. There are others that some can use, but we've always referred to this as being the most accurate. I actually shared the actual projections that we use. I'm more than happy to share that with you as well, what we use to figure this out.
But you have been accurate, and the accuracy that you are relying on is based on our district and not this, new expansive growth in terms of housing development, right?
Right. So since we don't know when the projects will be completed, we don't include those numbers in our projections. We offer them to the district so that you are prepared that when these housing projects are completed, that this is what the enrollment could be, but we don't include that because, like I said, we don't know for sure how many students will be at the end of the day in the project. We also don't know how long it will take, and sometimes there are changes that are made. So, for example, Lot A was supposed to have, I think, a 10% affordable units, and now they're all affordable units. So that definitely changed the amount of students that we anticipated. So as the projects continue and changes are made, it can also change the amount of students that we can anticipate.
Right. I'm asking about specifically the slide that says new housing project in the district and the anticipated student yield and how you arrived at those numbers.
So we use a Rutgers yield. So once we, I don't know if you're familiar with it, if you've seen it, if you look at it, you're able to see exactly how many 1 bedrooms, how many 2 bedrooms, if they're affordable housing, if they're rentals, if they're for purchase. And so once you plug in all those numbers, there's a formula that we use, and then it tells us exactly how many anticipated students there are.
Rutgers yield?
I think she's asking for the multiplier. If you could explain that to us, like what is the multiplier?
I don't have it with me. I did share it with Denise. I can get that for you. Right now, it's all in a formula that we have. But I can get you the specific multipliers if that's what you mean.
So on slide 20, it states anticipated for 43, 45 Maple Street.
Right.
And it is my understanding that that project has been completed. That project is occupied. We probably have information concerning the number of students who have actually enrolled, whose addresses are 43, 45. And I think we also had at least indications from the village or the developers of how many preschool age children are living in that. I'm not sure about that. So my question really is, since this report is being presented now, but one of those projects is our understanding completed, that should change both the projections in slides 16, 17, 18, 19, right? Because it's already been completed.
Yeah.
And perhaps also change the slide 20, because you can be looking at those preschool age children who are living there if that information is available. So
So
I'm,
just, if I
yeah.
could just speak to Maple, for example, so Maple, we generated about 8 students from Maple, however, there are 17 children in that development, which is close to that 18 number. Because of most of those, or a portion of those students are preschool or not school age, they are not factored into our number, and then I believe a couple of those students are attending other districts. So that number.
Okay, so that number is fairly accurate, as we now know, but it's not a pending project. We also know there's been discussion in the community about the possibility of at least one other project that quite possibly will be proposed more formally in the spring, which is 425 South Riverside, across from the supermarket. We don't know the configuration. So I guess all I'm saying is that this new information, both with regard to the opening of Maple Commons, information you've provided, and the other development, at least the one that we're talking about, might make sense in the next year to revisit those slides on 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 to see what's happened.
And that is our intent.
Good.
The multiplier that we used for Lot A was the 1 bedrooms was 0.07. And the 2 bedrooms was 0.16. So you multiply the units by the factor to see how many students are generated from there. And we estimated 11.
Yes, so I just want to add, this was a 23-24 school year. So it is a little outdated, but we wanted to present this. But when we do the updates, that will definitely be in the updates. And we also reached out to the towns and the villages to make sure that when we do the update, we have the most accurate information. So I do want to point out this was the 23-24 school year report that I'm presenting, that was asked to present.
Also, just for comparative purposes, there's another ratio that is often used. It's called the PUMA ratio. So when I use the PUMA multiplier, the 11 went to 17, which is the factor that is used in some of the Westchester County school districts. Some will combine, they'll say, let's take a combination of Puma and Rutgers, and then a historical number as well. But as the distribution of affordable housing changes, so in other words, if we flip this, if we said, okay, it's going to be 46 1 bedrooms and 54 2 bedrooms, it changes the number considerably. So.
Right. And even we were talking about if they're rentals versus purchasing, that also changes the numbers significantly. So we don't have the exact details for that. But right now we do anticipate that if there will be rentals, there will be 11 students.
As it stands right now, it's proposed to be ownership.
Ownership, exactly, and that's been on the table for some time, hasn't it?
Yes,
It's not like a new thing.
But it is, I don't believe it's definite.
No, but that's what the developer is taking to the table right now.
Right. So that would decrease this number considerably.
Wait,
Ownership would decrease the number, it would increase the number.
Ownership would increase.
No,
Ownership will decrease.
Would decrease this number.
Both according to the Rutgers and the Puma, both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about historical Croton, because Croton kind of.
We actually know that.
Well, based on Croton trends.
Well, I don't think we can really say that, because the fact of the matter is that there has not been any significant development in Croton since Berry Manor was built. And that's already 70 years ago.
In Aerocrest, we've had.
Yes, but in terms of the total, Aerocrest and Half Moon Bay, yes, but Aerocrest is, the total number of units by comparison to this is minuscule. Aerocrest is what? 20 single family homes. And one of these.
40 students.
Yes, but one of these developments is 100 units. And that's, I mean, it is tiny by comparison.
But not per student, like, just do the simple math, on Aerocrest, you have 20 homes, you have 2 children per home, that's 40 students from one development, which is significantly more than what you're talking about with multiple apartment units here.
Yes, because you are dealing with larger domiciles.
I know, we were saying like there hasn't been any significant development in the village since Berry Manor, like Aerocrest, Half Moon Bay, there's other things that have been.
Just think in very different in order of magnitude, I think.
Well, I will
The number of students that were added from Aerocrest, from the
Yeah, in terms of the total number, of units, the total number of bedrooms that was added by a development like Aerocrest is very small by comparison to the total number of bedrooms that are being added by proposals like Lot A.
Well, I would just say, because we could debate this,
Yeah.
but I will point out, just as I recollect, we have more students from Half Moon Bay than had originally been anticipated for a townhouse development of the type that was. Obviously, Lot A is being advertised or marketed, or to the extent it is, as a transit-oriented, commuter-based location. We don't know what's gonna happen. But I'm just saying, our projections for the board, as I see it, in the shortest term, is going to be, how do we look at these numbers in a year, 2 years? But pretty soon after that, we are going to know about these projects, and we're going to then be faced with actuals rather than projections. So it's obviously it's an academic exercise to some extent to talk about this.
It is, but for the fact that when we talk about this in theory and we err on the side of less students versus more students as a district, we're less prepared.
True.
Which is not what we do in any other area of our projections. We're always conservative in terms of making sure that we save revenue or that we put things away or that we have insurance policies. And we're being asked by the village and by, projections like this to kind of say, trust us. Don't prepare for, this. No, we've been historically right. And in no other area of anything of what we do we say, I'm sure that'll be fine.
And I agree with I completely agree with what you said. I think it's though, when we are talking about the 2025-26 budget, that will have less of an impact than in the future. Part of the issue and the reason why demographic studies, in my experience over the years, have been done, a lot of it has to do with space availability. Now, if we knew that we were having a large influx, such that we really needed to think about space configuration, that is a discussion worth having, and worth having even with these numbers. Because we're also going to have to talk about staffing, right? Additional classes, additional teachers in particular grades. But I guess to not disagree with you, we need to take this, the board and administration now and in the future, to really put that into our planning as we talked about all the other things about vision map and, opportunities. We need to keep it in mind.
But I also think that we need to start having conversations with the village about representing this accurately to voters and to the public, and in terms of how this potentially could impact the district, because they're kind of like, break the tax levy. It's only 10 students. It's not. It's potentially 10 tenure track salaries that we're having to add to meet one section more per grade over the next 10 years. And I mean, ask Denise how much that costs.
Yeah.
While they continue to issue pilots and portions of that money to themselves.
Well, I think that is also, even though, you know, I think we need to have those discussions. But I guess I would say different entities have their different agendas, and we can discuss, we can set forth our feelings, and we will see.
And to be clear, this is not a commentary on that agenda at all. This is a commentary on allowing us as a school district to appropriately prepare for that and being transparent with the public about the actual implication or the impact on our schools.
Agreed.
That is it. That is not a commentary on anything other than we should be working with the best information possible, and there should not be any kind of. We should all be working from the same sheet, and it should be an honest representation of what could potentially happen. Capacity.
And I just want to say to Dr. Vanagas, the reason why we're having this discussion is not to cast doubt on what you have presented, but just to make sure that we as a governing board
I mean, I have doubt, I'll be honest about that.
okay, but that's not why we're having a discussion. We're having a discussion among ourselves to see what is the purpose of going through this exercise and how we will use it.
Yes.
Absolutely. I appreciate the discussions.
If I may, I have a question on pages 4 and 5. So because each of our buildings has unique characteristics, I think looking at it in aggregate, K through 12 is really a meaningless measure because, as you increase the sample size, the standard error, goes down. And you can't take a high school student and put them in elementary school. So I'm really interested in looking at the per building differences and looking at the 2022-23 projection and the 23-24 projection. Directionally, they seem to be aligned, where elementary school was over projected and middle and high were under projected. Was that factored into the projections later on to 33?
Yes, we use that to make sure that our projections are up to date. So in this case, I believe it was a 23, 24. Sorry, the slides are, yes. So the birth rates were a little lower than anticipated, but the kindergarten was higher, which sometimes happens where the birth rates are the lowest for the projected time, but the incoming kindergarten was higher. So if we see that, our projections unfortunately are a little lower than we would think. Sometimes there's students that leave the district that we can't really understand why they left. We don't have that information. We really go with the trends. So we use that in our formulas moving forward to make sure that we change the anticipation of how many students might leave versus how many are going to stay versus the birth rate to kindergarten ratio. So we make sure that those projections are changed moving forward when we input our formulas.
And then if it's curious about page 17 and 18. So the relationship between the growth from 22 to 23 in K through 4, from 567 to 590, that's what, 23 students. Shouldn't between 23 and 24 for the middle school, shouldn't there be a bump? If you assume that that 23 number of students are evenly distributed among the grades, I would have anticipated a jump Or that, you know, those students graduating to middle school and seeing a slight bump, but it doesn't happen. Can you explain that? I mean, am I thinking about it right, or?
I'm just trying to understand. So you're saying from the K through 4 in 2023?
22 to 23, there's a big jump, right?
Mhm.
In 24, for grades 5 through 8, there's a, you know, the fourth graders are graduating to 5th grade. If I were to just evenly distribute or divide the, you know, that growth from 567 to 590 evenly amongst the, you know, 5 grades, that's what, you know, 4 and change. Let's call it 5 students. So 5 students are gonna, there's 5 students more that are going into fiscal year 24 in the middle school, but the middle school is declining.
Could be the graduating class was higher.
Right. The graduate. So what we're seeing is the graduating classes are higher than the incoming classes. So for example, the incoming kindergarten is lower than the graduating 12th grade. And so that eventually through the migration, you'll see that also transitioning.
But you see that jump in 9th grade or in the high school, and that's not happening. Unless you're saying like it's.
Right.
So every grade, we have every grade has lower students or less students than the decade prior.
Right. That's what we're seeing. And then we're also seeing losses in migration from 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. So we're seeing a few students that are also not going back to the school. If you see the report, we also break down each school by grade level as well. So you can see the projections, you can see the historical enrollment through each school by grade level, and then you could also see the projections for that as well. I'm not sure if you have the reports in front of you.
I was wondering that this is more of a question for administration, and if we don't know this yet, then, you know, perhaps it's something you could include in the weekly. Do we have a sense for that migration, students that are not returning in after 8, 9, or 10? Why they say they are leaving, but do we have any kind of indications as to reasoning and what's going on there? Is there any common thread to that?
I think that's typical in high school. Would you agree, Christina?
We do see that as a trend in high school. A lot of times students are making their own decisions of where they're going instead of kind of the parents dictating where they're going. So a little more freedom in that sense. And we also see them when they're going into high school, possibly moving away as well. But there aren't, it doesn't look like there's a large amount of students leaving because there is an overall gain that we're projecting in the high school, but there is enough that it's noticeable that you're gaining students in the other grades, but in those high school grades, you're losing a few students every year.
Yeah, I've heard anecdotal reports related to this. And admittedly, this is absolutely anecdotal evidence. But you know, most of the anecdotes that I hear about have to do with athletics and availability of athletic programs. That, you know, moving into a larger district or moving into a private school that offers athletic opportunities that a very small district like our own cannot.
We certainly hear that too, whether or not, I think we could say that's the.
We have no idea whether that's the majority by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I also think we get some of those students back, because from my understanding, after, you know, a year. And then I think we lose some students to like masters.
Yeah. Sure.
That's something we can look into.
I'm curious.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right,
Thanks.
you
Thanks.
too.
Thank you.
Christina.
Thank you.
Is it Denise, should we mention some reports that accompany this presentation? Are those things that we should take a look at?
Sure, I did include them in the weekly.
Okay,
So
sorry,
there's
I
a,
missed
there's
it.
a,
Yeah.
there's a link to the, within the weekly to both the presentation and the demographic report.
Okay, thank you.
And we will also post it on the website.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any more questions on this topic?
No, ma'am.
Moving on, item 3.2, the 2025-2026 school calendar. Recommended action. So the new business, the demographic study, there's no recommended action. Right. Item 3.2, 2025-2026 school calendar, recommended action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the 2025-2026 school calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question,
Just give me just a moment. Look at one thing.
Okay, I'm good.
all in favor?
Wait, before we do,
I'm sorry.
just one thing, and I guess, I know this was done by the calendar committee, and I know there are some variations from the BOCES calendar, some holidays that the BOCES provides. We know that our policy is that we do not provide transportation to private schools, but we do provide transportation to BOCES on days on which our schools are closed, but BOCES is open. I guess my question is, I know BOCES calendar days are for certain holidays, religious holidays, that we have not included. Is there any discussion of that, like Eid al-Fitr, and if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that's one of them that I recall. And I'm wondering if there's been any consideration about the fact that we may, how we deal with those who observe those holidays, number one, and number two, whether those may be something that may, in future years, provide even more constraint on us. Any thoughts on that? Or
One factor is with our CBA, with the union contract, we actually have extra days than BOCES. We found it very, very tight, quite honestly. A lot of the holidays that, would have been potentially into consideration fell on weekends this year. So it was a little bit of a luck with regards to many of the multicultural holidays. It would be nice to recognize all of them. Right now, I think we're up against some very, very tight parameters with the 187 requirements and those new holidays that have been, mandated by the state that we take off.
okay, I appreciate. The other thing I think for the public to, who may not have been looking at this, is we do have 4 weeks in this proposal for the late March, early April break, as opposed to, I know in the last year, in other years, we've had to kind of say, well, it's not going to be the full, 5-day continuous days, Monday to Friday. Look at the calendar. Yeah, so I'm glad this works out in a way that works out for families and for staff.
To John's point, to your question, certainly if there are more mandated holidays from the state or federal government, it will continue to just tighten what is already incredibly tight schedule. For example, Lunar New Year, I think it's February 17th, that occurs during our break anyway, otherwise that would have an impact. And typically the calendar committee meets multiple times looking at iterations. This time we met for about 25 minutes. And there really isn't any other option with our collective bargaining agreement obligations and where certain holidays fall. There just isn't any flexibility.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain, motion carries. Item 3.3, discussion of the 2025-2026 Board of Education meeting dates. Sorry?
We will not be adopting these at this meeting.
Okay, is there any discussion? Anyone?
No, I think they're fine, and one thing that I do note is that reorg meeting is scheduled for the 10th, Thursday the 10th, which I know we've had problems in the past when we've tried to do it right around July 4th, week of July 4th. Some people take off. So I think July 10th is good, and then you know, and I know the only other issue that does come up is the Tuesday work session. One of the things that has been on Tuesday, April 21st for the BOCES vote, one of the things that I know has been lobbied for over the years is to move that away from a specific date, which is determined by BOCES, I guess all BOCES around the state, to a window so that we wouldn't have to, break off of the Thursday consistency, but we'll see what happens with that.
Item 3.4, board policies for first reading. I will defer to the chair of the policy committee.
Thank you, Anna. There are a number of policies for first reading. The policy 1740 relates to an update with regard to our relations with non-public schools, and in particular, the provision, as we are required to do, of books and of other instructional materials and electronic materials to certain students who are attending non-public schools. It's really cleaning up a policy that has been has sat for a long time, I mean, years and years. So with regard to policy 1925 and the two exhibits, the policy and those exhibits have not been changed or even reviewed since 1994. The implementing regulations that cover interpreters actually was adopted in 2000. And nobody, mea culpa, my fault as much as anybody else, ever looked at that between then and now. One of the things that the regulations talk about is providing interpreters for parents or guardians with hearing impairments. We are recommending to the board, and I don't think it's done in many other or maybe any other districts, to include in our provision of interpretive services those who need interpretive services for language reasons. Nowhere else in our policy says that we will make a commitment to provide interpretive services for those who are not primarily English speakers, even though we do. One of the reasons why this came forth is because our current policy states that our district office will maintain a listing of those folks who will provide interpretive services for the hearing impaired. However, we don't maintain a list. There is no such list. We actually, what we do, and Dr. Paul has said this to the committee, is that when interpretive services are needed for hearing impaired or otherwise, we either have staff who can provide that, or we use BOCES as a resource. So that policy has been, the recommendation is to modify the policy to incorporate what our practice is. The other thing is that those two exhibits are exhibits for someone to request an interpreter if you're hearing impaired, a parent, and the response, but those are not used. Somebody sends an email, somebody calls, they say, I need an interpreter is provided. So we don't need to have exhibits in our policy manual that are not used. The last thing is the policy 5152.1, admission of foreign students. What that deals with is specifically students who are not residents of the district as defined by the education law and federal law, because they are here on a J1 visa as part of the foreign exchange program, or here as part of an F1 visa where they have the right to come to the United States on that F1 visa for 1 year and can be extended to engage in educational pursuits. Foreign students who attend colleges are here on an F1 visa, or trade schools or whatever. Under the regulations of the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration Naturalization Service, or CIS, whichever one it is, one of those initials, a student can get a F1 visa if they're in a foreign exchange program, where they will come to our school as part of the exchange program. We'll have a sponsor. We will provide them, as this policy is suggesting, and as we do, with the right to attend without payment of tuition as part of the exchange program, to participate in extracurricular activities, and to have transportation if they would otherwise be eligible for transportation. And the way we've stated this, if the student is in the 12th grade and they're here at time of graduation, they won't graduate with a diploma, but they will be recognized with a certificate of attendance and be able to participate in graduation and, you know, go to the prom and all that other stuff. With regard to F1 visa holders, under the strict interpretation or the regulations of the Department of Homeland Security, those students can attend high school. They cannot attend elementary school, not public elementary school. They could attend a private elementary school, but not a public elementary school. And those students can only attend if admitted in advance with the payment of full tuition and the tuition to be paid before enrollment. So that's a very different relationship. Those students, as the policy proposes, would also be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities, would be provided transportation if otherwise eligible because of the place of their residence. I should point out one other thing. In the next section on old business, and I wanted to just explain why the policy on transportation for non-public students, non-public school students, has been removed, is because in research that I actually did day before yesterday, or maybe it was yesterday, I discovered that a school district is not required to provide transportation to a student on an F1 visa or a J1 visa to a non-public school. Because based on commissioner decisions, that student is not a resident of the district when their parent, guardian, is not a resident of the district. And wherever that student may be staying is not the folks or the adults with whom they're staying do not have the authority to serve as the student's parent or guardian. I should point out one other thing, because I know there may have been some discussion or thought about this in the community. This policy does not address and does not limit the right of someone who is here on a non-immigrant visa who is a resident of the district to have their children attend the school, our schools. So for example, someone who is in district because they are on H-1B, they have an H-1B visa and their child's with them and they are a resident of the district, or they're on an E-1 visa as an executive, that child, because they reside in the district and would meet the residency requirements for being in the district, that child, those children would be permitted to enroll in the district. And so that's the 8413 has been held back just so that it can make clear that the district will not have responsibility to provide transportation to someone with a J1 or a F1 visa to a non-public school. But other than that, which is somewhat longer explanation than perhaps I thought would happen, but that's where we're at. I know you're all laughing because I truncated it a bit. Is, if there are any other questions on those policies that are on for first reading, please get to me, get to the policy committee. We will discuss them before the March meeting, and the 8413 and 8413R will be on the agenda for second reading and approval in March.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Neil. Moving on to ongoing business. Agenda item 4.1, policies for second reading. Recommended action be resolved, the Board of Education hereby conducts a second reading and adopts the following board policies as presented.
So move.
Second.
On the question?
So, we discussed these all previously, or you had them. The policy committee asked if any board members or the public had any questions about any of them. We heard none. And unless there are any questions or discussions, let us move forward with it.
Thank you, Neil. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Steve's a little bit in shock.
That was a truncated presentation.
I was just saying, with the over under.
Still got a little ways to go, sir. You're helping me out here.
Instructional personnel. Item 5.1, recommended action be resolved, the Board of Education hereby accepts the instructional personnel resignation of Eileen DC, elementary teacher, for the purpose of retirement, effective July 1st, 2025, and employee number 663 for the purpose of retirement, effective July 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Moving on to donations. Item 6.1, establishment of new scholarship, creative green scholarship. Recommended action be resolved, the Board of Education hereby approves the establishment of the Create Your Dream Scholarship at Fulton Harmon High School.
So moved. Second.
On the question? I'd just like to add, the purpose of the scholarship is given to a graduating senior who intends to pursue a fine arts related field in college. Preference given to student most in need of financial support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you very much to Pamela McCready for her generous donation. Item 6.2, donation from Franzozo Contracting Inc. for the Erica Iescas Memorial Award 2025. Recommended action. Be it resolved, the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation in the amount of $1,000 from Franzozo Contracting Inc. as contribution to the Erica Iescas Memorial Award at Croton Harmon High School.
So moved.
Second.
On the question. This is a donation that comes to us. It's come to us before, it's reoccurring. And it is to honor the memory of Erica Iescas, who was taken very early in life. It's given to a graduating senior who's planning to continue his or her education in the field of science research. Other criteria considered: overall GPA, community service, extracurricular activities, sports, and employment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carried. Thank you very much to friends with the contracting for their very generous donation. Item 6.3, donation Kathleen Girardi for the Michael J. Girardi Baseball Award. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation in the amount of $250 from Kathleen Girardi as contribution to the Michael J. Girardi Baseball Award.
So moved.
Second.
On the question. This is awarded to a graduating senior baseball player who has demonstrated good sportsmanship and character and outstanding effort to try his best and is a team player.
I would just like to add that Kathleen Girardi, we should recognize her as a retired but long time employee of the district, a former district clerk, a former secretary to the superintendent, and her husband, Michael, who I think people refer to as Mel, was really a major supporter of youth sports and particularly baseball in our community for many, many years.
Thank you, Neil. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you very much to Kathleen Girardi for the recommendation. Item 6.4, donation from Chef for musical instruments. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education gratefully accepts a grant from the Croton Harmon Education Foundation in the amount of $8,000 for the purchase of musical instruments to be in band and orchestra programs in the district.
So moved. Second.
On the question.
Aye.
Abstain. Motion carries. Thank you so much to Chef for continuing to support our schools in so many areas, and in particular for these instruments. I love hearing our bands play, so this is very exciting. Moving on to the consent agenda. Item 7.1, recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question.
1 second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carried. We will now move into our second hearing of the public. Speakers should say their name, including school district residents, and not make comments about a specific person, staff, student, or currently part of the district resident, and those comments are prohibited.
Is that right? Is that right? I'd like to compliment the administration, the presentation of the budget. Always do a good job over the several months preparing the budget and enlightening the public to precisely what's going on. Your process should be copied by all the other meetings that I go to, where it's not quite as certainly detailed and honest. Like also compliment the administration for the safety concerns they have with electric buses. If you remember, we paid 3 times what a bus would cost. 66 passenger bus, we paid $450,000 per bus and $100,000 in ground improvements. So we spent about $1.5 million on 3 buses, where we would normally spend $500,000 or less. With the problem with crashes and incinerations of passengers in electric cars featured in the news over the last 2 weeks, 3 incidents, one of which was in Westchester. That concern could also spread to the bus fleet, Broken Harmon, which, contrary to the advice of those that knew, rushed into this. And with the public fully behind you, I understand it, rushed into this. And maybe there's nothing to be concerned about. But I remember gasoline school buses, gasoline vehicles that were used to transport the population. So I'm happy that the administration is jumping ahead of this. You as a board should get detailed reports on your bus fleet that's electrified to see what dangers, what problems it has, because you are ultimately, just like safety of this building, which was neglected for years until incidents happen. You should get ahead of the curve and be wired into that. You'll notice that the Village of Croton just repurposed some of its electric vehicles because of the problem with those vehicles as they were used. Thank you. So I'm glad the administration's ahead of that and is conducting special safety classes, but you should get personally involved. Item 2 is that historically in our area, but in Croton, you've done a lousy job of teaching about socialism and communism. And if the purpose of putting it in that young people have drifted toward these ideologies over the last few years. And the reason is unlike Nazism, where you could show the film and the concentration camps and so forth. We haven't done the same job with the communist Chinese or what happened in the Soviet Union with the gulags, et cetera, et cetera. And perhaps it's a fear because so many people in Croton were communists. And I'm not judging them. People do different things at different times. But we should not be afraid to look at communism in space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Moving board reports.
Yeah, so we held a meeting of the advocacy committee on February 11th and did several things. One was to review the governor's budget, which I will not go over in detail since Denise did so in her presentation, but you know, we covered a lot of the things that she mentioned. One of the areas of focus for us on that in that meeting was getting more of a sense of the cell phone policy that is included in the governor's executive budget. And I think just posed some questions in the conversation about elements about the cell phone policy that remained unclear. Just a couple of examples. While it is clear that the proposed policy would apply in school grounds, it is not clear as, for example, what would happen if, or how the rule applies on buses, as an example, or when students leave campus to say, for example, go off school grounds for lunch.
So these are just some examples of areas where we felt that there was a need for more clarity on the cell phone policy and proposal. Cell phone policy proposal. And with, I think, a general concern that a general concern that that we voiced before around the need to look into more options for schools and districts to be able to adapt solutions based on their own unique needs. So we noted that as one main concern. We also noted that, well, in addition to the cell phone policy, we looked at the fact that there are some legislator meetings coming up. I believe there's one happening tomorrow with Senator Pete Hartman, state level senator. And it started to just create a list of items that we want to bring to elected officials during the legislative session. So questions around things like the cell phone policy and recommendations regarding the cell phone policy, as well as some areas within the budget that we have questions about as well. We did talk about the electric bus mandate as well in our conversation, and noted that as an item to have discussion with legislators. I believe the deadline is still 2027 for districts to go fully electric.
No,
There-
2027, you can't
Purchase, exactly. You
And
can
then
purchase
2035
any new, and then 2035 is the 2035, right? Is when it needs to be fully electric, so. Just with an eye towards that timeline has not changed in the latest proposal. It seems like the state is wanting to kind of see how it goes as we get closer to that date. But I think it's an item of discussion, right, with legislators as far as the realisticness of that deadline.
There are
So I think,
exceptions, is that correct? For the 2027,
what's that?
there are exceptions. We might not qualify for them, but there are
Yeah.
exceptions.
I think that's right. So we have that on the list. We have some upcoming dates to pay attention to, I guess, in the conversation on regionalization. I think there's a meeting on February 27th work session, where we're going to be covering follow-up on regionalization. And then
that will be at BOCES. We won't be able to.
When I do, I guess it's polling.
Yeah.
Since I'm on the BOCES board, I will discuss that a little bit.
and
You didn't?
I did.
and a March 12th BOCES regionalization meeting happening at 7 p.m. So I mean, that's just a very quick summary. We'll have the minutes up on that meeting shortly. But those were the main items, and then we're going to keep on our radar any other further meetings with elected officials to discuss these various items. And then, like, Sarah, you want to add anything else?
I think we should wait until, so Sarah's attending the meeting with Senator Huckam tomorrow, and it might make sense to do our legislative advocacy update after that, so we can go over what she's able to cover tomorrow. I attended the meeting with Assembly Member Wattenberg last week. The only other thing I wanted to add is that we officially, the advocacy committee just needs to highlight for the policy committee that if the cell phone legislation, the cell phone piece of the budget becomes, a thing, the school boards have been challenged or will be required to adopt a cell phone policy by August 1st, 2025.
Wow.
We have decided within our committee that we're, I think, gonna continue to hold a little to see what happens before we start working on that, but just formally, that needs to be passed over so that we have visibility to it on the policy committee.
I'm assuming that the reason why that deadline exists is because what the governor says, if it is adopted in the final budget, will be in effect in
Right.
September. And we will not know whether there's gonna be a whole lot of flexibility.
Right.
And if there is no flexibility, then it's a very easy thing to pass or work on if there is some flexibility. And I know many districts, ours included, have talked about as Theo said, why it would be good to have some flexibility to meet individual conditions that will, that will make our work a little more substantive or substantial.
I guess via the one house process, they could land on a different date on implementation.
They could land on a
Have to be
different,
Different everything.
different everything.
different everything, but.
Just as a matter of housekeeping, how long does it usually take NISBA to come out with a recommended policy when something like that happens? Is it pretty quick, or? Because I look at my summer months being spent drafting.
Drafting this.
Yeah, it probably is pretty quick on something like this because they will be working together with the governmental relations folk to know, what they have to turn around. But, like, for example, when we had the requirement to put in the workplace violence prevention plan and program with a 30-day deadline, they got it out immediately. Same thing with,
Okay, thank you. Communications? I'm so sorry, I'm not looking at it, and we can go on to audit.
No, it's fine.
No,
Well,
we can do audit.
just so the full board knows, we're going to meeting sometime in March. We had an initial date, but that doesn't work because of the Jewish holiday. But we will finalize date and get back to everybody.
Communications?
All right, so, we met on the 23rd of January. And we discussed budget communications, which are underway. And we'll continue to see lots more from Denise regarding our budget information. So we'll continue to work on that and keep an eye to make sure that things are out. So the community is well aware of what our budget is. We did work and sent to the board the draft process protocols for the Meet the BOE. So please send any feedback that you have to the communications committee. So we'll work at our next meeting to finalize that and turn that over to board development, keep it part of their board governance documentation. We also worked on, we talked about the flow chart of district contacts, which is up on the district website. And adjusting so that there was some initial intro information about the role of the board as an oversight. We are continuing to work on the hearing of the public, opening and closing statements. We had tonight, we saw our first student recognition at meetings, so that was really exciting to see that come to fruition, and we're looking forward to having more of those at our meetings. And then, we'll be continuing to monitor, work with the district to look at social media and website engagements, ways that we can continue to improve our communications. That's all I've got.
Policy? And at the same time, you could just do the ad hoc committee.
And then you're gonna come back to me at the end, right?
Did I
yeah.
We don't have to go in alphabetical, or we can kind of go around the room.
my glasses
That's fine, no problem. Let Neil go first.
Okay,
Bring them.
policy met on February 5th. The policies that are on for first reading were discussed. One of the things that we discussed, and I will bring to the board's attention, is we discussed something that the board had tasked the policy committee to review, which is the policy 2325 on video participating in board meetings by video without providing the location of the board member. Participating remotely in quote extraordinary circumstances. We came to the conclusion, and we recommend to the board that no change be made. In other words, that we not adopt the provision that would permit us to have such video participation. One of the main reasons that we discussed is that if someone were to attend the meeting on extraordinary circumstances without noticing the location of that individual, under Public Officer Law 103A, the board must provide members of the public, since they are not going to go to the location where that person, they don't have the right to go to the location where that person participating remotely is at. The board must, or any public entity who's having such a hearing must provide the opportunity for the public to participate in the meeting, such as with the hearing of the public, through Zoom or other means like that. And we just felt that given the nature of the technical issues, et cetera, that we might have in putting that together, and also running a meeting, that it really is not worth it. Board member can participate by noticing their address, and can participate as an observer, not as a voting member, by obviously watching the meeting. I can't participate by speaking, but can hear what's going on. But the other issue is that if you do this 103A option, you are still required to have a board quorum at the location, physical location where the meeting is held. So you can't just say one person's in the room and everybody else is on a video. So we felt, and we bring it to the board because we were asked to discuss and give our recommendation, that no change should be made to that policy. With regard to the items that we did not get to, there are a number of policies relating to recruitment, hiring, personnel matters regarding professional staff, which have been reviewed by John Griffiths, and we are prepared. We just ran out of time because we did it in 1 hour and 16 minutes. So there are people who are keeping our committee on task.
That's the
what?
No, he's keeping us on task. And with regard to the ad hoc committee, we met, I think it was January 30th or somewhere around then. Nope, not January 30th. But whenever it was, somewhere during that week. But whatever day we met, we continued to work on the social media policy. We're not done yet. We finished our discussion of policy 0105 and forwarded it to council to give us advice for that policy on equity, inclusivity, accessibility will be ready for presentation and consideration by the board.
It was January 24th.
Okay, thank you. And it's my hope that we will have that ready for the March meeting. I have a feeling, though, that if there's going to be extensive discussion at the same time as we're discussing budgets and all the other things that we'll be discussing on March 13th, we'll have to figure out how we can, have enough time to do everything.
Thank you. I don't think this is gonna come on. There we go. Okay, so we'll be very fast. We also had like a robust and quick meeting, but we got through a lot. Among the topics we discussed were the superintendent evaluation timeline and process. As you know, that is part of our responsibility as a board. So we discussed how we might enact that at the end of the year. And that is an ongoing conversation between board development and our superintendent. We also spent a lot of time talking about the board goals that we proposed at the last work session here. Took the opportunity to sort of break down the language, dig into it a little bit along with Steve for administration, so that we could really ensure that the types of district-specific professional development we propose doing align with sort of everyone's availability and sort of make good use of district administrators' time, because we're thinking about sort of creating some opportunities for learning for the board that also allow us to learn specifically about how the district works. So we're going to continue to talk about how to enact that and refine the goals in a way that's really actionable and bring those back, but it's not going to be probably until after our next meeting. We want to remind you that just because we haven't fully articulated and set goals in stone doesn't mean that we don't still have the goals and that we're not still working on them. They don't have to be set in stone for us to continue with that process. And they are multi-year goals, so they're not going to be over by the end of this year. The last thing that we talked about was just in terms of our own governance function and the improvements that we're trying to make on that front. We are going to be reaching out to set dates for a spring retreat, at which we'll be able to sort of evaluate how we've done as a board and what we feel like we need to change and improve. We're also talking about a summer gathering, becoming sort of like an annual thing for this board, so that we can confirm and reconfirm with ourselves and potentially any new trustees what our norms are and what our governance expectations and protocols are, so that we can start off the term every year with a unified vision of how we're going to support each other and move forward. The last two little things that we still have that are in the works are our write-up of committee responsibilities that we're going to fold into this board governance kind of document that we're crowdsourcing from all of you. So any committee that wants to share information about how something works, they can share it with us. We'll give you a place to put all of that stuff. And all of this will eventually inform our trustee onboarding guide, so that future trustees will sort of be able to dive in with a how-to handy document that helps them get off to a strong start with all the fun things that we do every year. That's the scoop.
Thank you. Sure. Moving on to pulling up order. Well, there we go.
Oh, do I? I don't know if I
I'm sorry, we're not gonna, yeah.
I don't know.
It's late in the evening.
I'm trying to think if I have anything. I'd have to look.
Does anyone have the pulling up order?
Hold on real quickly, I mentioned BOCES, and I know Theo mentioned about reorganization meetings. At the BOCES board meeting on Tuesday, there was discussion of what the process of regionalization discussions will be. The two meetings that we're talking about, February 27 and March 12th, the day that was, are not the same. That discussion is not going to be the same. It's going to be, so if boards are not able to attend on February 27th, as we are not able to attend, the district superintendent, Lou Boyle, said that either they will try to schedule additional or alternate days, perhaps on a Monday or a Friday, he said, and or he would be able to come and meet directly with boards of component districts such as ours, who can't make it on the 27th, to have a discussion about those items, or might actually be trying to get 2 or 3 boards to come together to have that discussion, and basically take care of, alleviate some of the burden on it, but either way, they want to get the input of all of the districts in the BOCES region that will inform the submission that has to be made on April 15th. He also said that at the moment, 16 of the 18 component districts have agreed to and are participating in this development process. And he anticipates that the other two probably will join in at some point, particularly when they realize that if they don't join in, any of the funding that's going to come from SED for implementation, they won't be part of, so I don't want to stay away from that.
Quick question, did Neil mention anything about whether the strength and needs survey that each of the component districts submitted? Whether that survey would be something that he would share with component districts ahead of these convenings? Or at these convenings, or?
He did not say anything about the structure of what would be presented. He did indicate that to the extent that there was similarities in the strengths and needs by districts, that would form part of the discussion, which would then result in the one-page one-page submission that's going to be done on April 15th, and I guess the work that comes after that.
Yeah, we just have a couple of things. Oh, are you done? Oh. Use my stage voice. Okay, so I I watched online last week the NISBA Capital Conference, and I will note that the recording was sent out by Danielle Grasso today. So I would really encourage everybody to take a look at it. The governmental relations team of NISBA does a really great job of breaking down the governor's proposed budget. And there are also several different panels with legislators, with people from the governor's office, with SED. And there was actually a really interesting roundtable with some of the Albany journalists who have covered politics for some years and sort of what they have seen in terms of trends with this budget and prior budgets. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at that recording if you're able. I also wanted to note that on the 30th, the LHEC held their annual legislators forum. Happy to say that it was very well attended. We had about 117 different district participants that were signed up for that event. And we had a good number of legislators and had a really robust discussion about the governor's budget and about where LHEC saw some legislative priorities in things that the legislators could think about as they are crafting their White House budgets. Then I also wanted to note that Westput will be having their next Money Talks series of lunch and learn webinars on Friday, March 14th at noon. So you can register for that through Denise Pistachio. And also there will be at the end of March on 31st will be a 7 p.m. Webinar, so that annual panel discussion. And this year is a very timely discussion on students' social media and cell phones. So given the potential cell phone ban that is being put forth by the governor, I think that would be a very good thing for everyone to attend. That's it.
I do have stuff in.
Sure, go for it.
It's not a lot, but just two little things. These are less committee related and more fund related. So I had a chance to go to the River Towns orchestra performance. It was, I think, now 2 weeks ago, where our local Rivertown's middle school orchestras come together. This year it was held at Sleepy Hollow High School, and our middle school band and members of our middle school orchestra, members of both the middle school band and middle school orchestra, joined with students from I think, I want to make sure I get the schools right. Terrytown, Ossining, us, Peekskill, there's one more because it's 5. I can't remember what the other is. Or I don't know.
For Sleepy Hollow.
Perhaps,
Yeah.
but I think that's covered with Terrytown. Anyway, I apologize to the one that I'm not remembering. Now it's gonna be like recorded in perpetuity that it was also 10:30, it's late. But it was a great performance and they had so much fun, and I had so much fun being in the audience, just watching how much our students enjoy playing. So a nice connection, also thinking back to the chef grant from earlier this evening, which actually we didn't talk about in detail, but it's in part designed to ensure that our students, especially at the elementary and middle school level, have access to instruments in the school buildings that they don't have to transport on buses, because that actually can be prohibitive to students taking up larger instruments like the cello and some of the big brass instruments that you actually can't easily transport back and forth. So it's a nice connection into that pipeline of becoming lifelong musicians, which I think is really, really great. The other thing I wanted to just give a shout out for, and I know you've already heard about it from Mr. Walker and Mr. Paul, but I had the opportunity to attend an excellent E&L technology workshop a couple of weeks ago, and just see our district's team kind of in action, explaining and helping families and parents use the many sort of like resources that we have in their native language as they need to. So it was a really great, well-attended event and a really nice community moment. So I wanted to thank you all for letting me be a part of it, and I had a great time. Just watching you all in action was awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Neil.
I attended the Village Bicycle and Pedestrian meeting on behalf of the district. They normally hold the meeting on a day that conflicts with our board meetings or work sessions, so it couldn't go, but it did not conflict this time. Discussed basically not that much that affects the district directly. They talked about the updates in the Godwall, Cleveland Circle repaving and plantings there. Different places. One of the things that's going to be happening through Project Mover, which folks may not have heard about, is the ability to have electric bike stations to basically rent and bikes. We talked about the placement of where those may be. Don't really affect students, but they will affect, they could affect families who are, looking for that. And they also talked about when Earth Day is going to be happening. And they want to relaunch the Slow Down Broken campaign to update signage and to do more work so that we can have more attention to speeding and traffic safety.
Well, all those rising high school students get their driving permits and and some of them.
That's right. So that's I guess the sum of our discussion.
I just want to quickly highlight, I have registered for the March 14th. It seems like a hot date, everything's going on that day. Live virtual superintendent evaluation workshop, which is my understanding is it helps explain super eval.
Yep, it's hosted by NISBA.
Right, it's hosted by NISBA, which is the program that we use to work in conjunction with the superintendent to as a board conduct this annual review. If anybody else is interested in doing that, I would ask you to please talk to Denise. I know it's virtual, it's a half-day event, but in the past, it's always fallen on the board president to kind of like manage some of the input in that, and that has always been in the capable hands of Sarah. So I thought that I should probably brush up on my skills with respect to that element of technology, given my love of technology. And then I also just wanted to give a shout out to all of our winter sports athletes who have, are coming to the end of their season, celebrating their senior games. And I want to say just what a wonderful process and tradition we have here. And I've seen it obviously in other high schools, but the act of getting your fellow teammates to lift you up as a senior and the different things that I've seen the teams do is just, it must be a very difficult time to come to that last game, your senior year, playing your sport, and to be celebrated by the community who always comes out, your parents, to be surrounded by family members, loved ones, friends, fellow teammates. It's just really been heartwarming as we build up to my favorite day ever, which is graduation, and you all fly away, Tigers. So Tigers don't fly, maybe ours do, right?
They're flying tigers.
These are flying Tigers. But that has been very heartwarming, and I would encourage anybody, I think track has theirs left. And then there's all the spring senior games, so I would encourage you if you can to try and attend some of those events because it's really just great to watch. That is all I have.
I have the right number of schools. It was actually 4 schools for mine.
Oh, good for you.
Yes. So I didn't forget
You know,
anybody.
the town people would be very happy that you did not include Irvington. Moving out of, there was actually one other thing I wanted to say, I apologize, because I know it's late. And I'm speaking to my fellow board members, to the extent that you are hearing from concerned community members regarding changes to policy or practice regarding anything that's, rolled out by the new administration. I've had great success in turning everybody over to contact building level leadership, and to contact, obviously Steve directly for clarification, reassurances. I think it's important that we make ourselves, we start to have communication one-on-one with individuals who are concerned in this community about changes that are being spoken about on a national level. That's what I have to say about that. Moving on to items needed for the next Board of Education meeting. So we just need meetings, that's what we need.
Just say.
Yeah.
And then, action item 8.5, executive session, recommended action be resolved for education hereby enters into the executive session to discuss and exempt subject involving legal advice from the school district attorney subject to attorney-client privilege.
So move.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We will now enter into executive session. At the close of the executive session, we will adjourn the meeting. Camera, thank you to everyone.